Danny, Cal, Pete, Roach and Julia were tied to the chairs in front of them, the plastic cable ties cutting into their wrists as the bus twisted and turned, smashing into the groups of the dead as it barreled down the road. George and Lily stood up front watching over them. 6 guards stood next to the chair, their back to the prisoners, wobbling every time the bus hit something. Cal was crying silently as the fear clung to his being. He tried to snuggle into Danny, but his hands were tied and he couldn't quite reach her. It was killing Danny to see her little brother like this. She wriggled to try and get out of her constraints, the plastic cutting deeper. As Danny writhed, she felt the bus start to slow down. She looked around the windows but could not see out of them. George turned to the driver of the bus, who had slammed on the brakes. The bus creaking to a stop, the occupants being flung around like a pea in a tin. Danny looked through the windshield of the bus, through the metal grating, and her heart stopped at what she saw. Her mouth fell open, and her blood ran ice cold. In front of the bus stood nearly 1,000 or so infected, shambling around the street, bumping into each other, not moving.
Oh my God.
What? What is it?
Okay, Cal, listen to me. I need you to close your eyes and cover your ears, okay? Good
Danny,
boy.
what is it?
Good. Now stay like that until I tell you it's okay.
Danny!
The horde.
What?
You two, shut the fuck up.
George, what are we going
Right,
to
you
do?
need to think of something because there is no way we are going to get through that.
Let me think.
George, they're coming!
Oi, fuckface, you better do something.
Shut it.
As the bus squeaked to a stop, a large Scabbie, different from the rest, stepped forward. Its upper body was bloated. Large, blood-filled boils bulged on its body. Under its chin was a large flap of skin which hung down to its chest. Suddenly, it let out this deep growl like a bullfrog. The flap of skin suddenly filled with something, and it let out a deep, blood-curdling screech which echoed through the street and chilled the bones of everyone inside the bus. Everyone that could move ran to the front of the bus to look. Then, the horde started to turn towards the bus, and as if in unison, started shambling towards them before engulfing it in a wave of rot, blood, and death. The infected surrounded the bus, banging on the side, clawing at the metal, tearing their flesh, desperate to get to the occupants inside. As George watched on in horror, he looked visibly shaken, clearly racking his brain to figure out what they were going to do to try and get out of this mess. Suddenly, like a light bulb going off in his mind, he jumped into action.
Right. Guys, get ready to fight. I'm going to open the windows, kill as many as you can, then we can get the bus moving.
Just ram them! Opening the window is a really bad idea.
Quiet! Get ready, guys.
Look, man, let us go. We can help you fight. There is no way this is going to work.
No chance. Just sit there and enjoy the show.
The guards, including the driver, lunged forward, pulling aside the windows to the bus. The sounds of the dead erupted, filling the bus, deafening the inhabitants inside. They swung their pipes, knives, and planks of wood, desperate to kill as many of the dead as possible. But quickly, they were overpowered. The guards being pulled from the windows and engulfed into the sea of dead, ripping and tearing. George kept fighting in vain. Meanwhile, Roach fought against the restraints, eventually using all of his might to break the plastic. His wrists cut and bleeding, he broke everyone else's restraints and helped them up.
Sit back down!
Shut up! Where are our weapons?
What?
Our guns? Where are they?
Fuck! They're in the back! In the back!
Pete, Julia, go. I'm gonna drive.
Pete and Julia jumped up and lunged for the back to grab their guns, stumbling to the window, barging George out of the way. Roach threw himself into the driver's seat, trying to start the bus.
Come on, bud, get us out of here.
Working on it.
Hey! Get away from there! You can't
Oi,
do that!
bitch! Shut the fuck
Danny
up!
punched Lily, and she collapsed to the ground. Danny stood up, grabbing a knife which was on the floor, and pushed George to the ground.
Hey!
Sit down. You two know you're not actually doing anything to those numbers out there. You caused this. Your men are dead because of you. And now you're going to get us all killed. So sit down, shut up, and let us handle this.
Hold on a minute.
Another word and I will throw you out that door myself.
How we doing, dude?
It won't start.
I'm out.
Me too.
What the hell do we do?
Right, Roach, keep trying. I'm gonna go onto the roof and see if I can see a way through.
Pete pushed the ceiling hatch open and scrambled onto the roof, pulling himself onto the rusted metal of the bus. He staggered to his feet, almost slipping from the roof. Below him, he could see hundreds of hands clawing at the air trying to reach him. The sound was unbearable, the deep growling and gargling.
Oh, shit. Come on, Pete, think.
Any luck?
There's far too many of them, I can't see a way through.
Pete's eyes darted left and right as he scanned the ocean of death for an opening. To his left, he saw a gap in the dead which led to the opening of a lane, but he would have to jump to try and make it, something which filled his stomach with deep dread.
Danny, listen to me. I have a plan. Keep trying the bus and get out.
Wait, what? Pete, what's the plan?
Trust me, I'll meet you at the stadium.
What? No, Pete, wait, no!
He looked behind him as he stepped back. The heel of his heavy leather boot rested on the edge of the bus, the dead, snake-like fingers nearly scraping at his feet. He got into a running position, knelt down, his heart beating 1,000 beats a second. He took a deep, slow breath. The cries from the dead pounding in his head. A bead of sweat slowly trickled down his brow. Then he ran. His feet banged on the roof of the bus loudly, and when the toe of his left foot reached the other side, he jumped. He soared through the air, over the barbed wire, barely missing it, over the group of scabbies which were oblivious to a snack leaping over their heads. Pete waved his arms wildly as he fell, hitting the ground with a thump, landing awkwardly on his ankle, and he rolled to a stop, sliding on the wet tarmac of the road. He scrambled to his feet and brushed himself off. He put weight on his ankle and was able to stand on it barely. Just a sprain, he thought, as he turned to the horde. The image of the creatures surrounding the bus, scrambling to get in, the shadows of his friends and his family inside, chilled him to the bone. He then raised his arms and shouted,
Oi, come on this way, you ugly motherfuckers! Come on, all you can eat Scabbie buffet, this way, come on!
Pete limped through the lane as a small group of the dead branched off and started to follow him, arms grabbing in the air, their groans drowned out by the cacophony of sound from the horde. Danny ran to the window, throwing herself against it, tears streaming down her face. She watched as Pete disappeared around the corner with a group of about 20 Scabbie shambling after him, disappearing
Pete!
around the corner too.
Pete! God damn you!
Looks like Loverboy would rather take his chances out there than be stuck here with you. Says a lot, I think.
She turned to George, her face twisted in an anger-filled contortion, thrusting her knife against his throat, the blade starting to draw blood.
Up!
Sorry.
Get the fuck up! And get up on the roof!
Okay, chill. I'm going.
Now!
George scrambled up through the hatch and clumsily staggered to the roof, nearly slipping off, catching his balance. His eyes went wide and his heart skipped a beat when he saw the hundreds of dead faces staring back at him. The stench of rot clung to his nostrils, making him retch. He brought his hand up to his nose, covering his mouth to stop him throwing up. Danny climbed through the hatch, a lot more graceful. The anger still plastered on her face. She didn't look at her dead. Her focus was on the man who put them in this position, the man who caused this situation. And she was not going to stop. Back in the bus, Roach was still trying to get the bus to start, turning the key and pumping the accelerator, but nothing. Julia tried to stop Danny from climbing on the rooftop, but Danny had battered her hands away.
Julia, what's going on?
I don't know what she's doing.
Stop her from doing something stupid.
At Roach's command, Julia jumped up onto the hatch and pulled herself up. The pain in her arms and upper body were immense, but she fought through it. As she emerged, she froze at the sight of the dead around the bus and steadied herself on the rooftop. She tried everything in her power not to look at the hundreds of hands clawing at them, looked straight at Danny, who was pointing her knife directly into George's face, who had now backed himself to the edge of the bus, his arms outstretched to try and calm Danny down, fear now a permanent fixture on his face. Sweat was pouring down his face and was glistening on his beard. The barbed wire on the side of the bus had caught George on the leg, cutting his calf. A trickle of bright red blood had started to soak through his trouser leg, and the sound of the dead erupted even louder at the smell of fresh blood.
This is your fault. You caused this.
This isn't my fault. Listen to me. I didn't know the bus would stop. Come on, just put the knife down.
Stop telling me what to do. You're in no position.
What are you doing? This is not a good idea.
Yeah, Danny, this is not a good idea.
For a brief moment, Danny was distracted at hearing Julia's voice. She didn't expect her to follow her up, and Danny turned to see Julia standing near the hatch with her arms spread out trying to calm Danny down. George used this opportunity to make his move, and he knocked the knife out of Danny's hand and it clattered on the roof, sliding off the bus and into the dead. He lunged for her, wrapping his gargantuan hands around her throat and throwing his heavy weight on top of her, pushing her to the ground. His grip tightened as he squeezed and banged Danny's head on the bus. Danny clawed and slapped at his arms as she choked, the air starting to leave her. George tightened, his face twisting under the strain.
Hey, stop! Get off her!
Shut the fuck up!
Get off!
I will kill you just like Abbott wants.
I said, get off!
Julia threw herself at George, barging into the mountain of a man with all of her might, and he lost his balance, letting go of Danny's throat. He was still sitting on her, but his attention was now on Julia. As he stood up to lunge for her, with a sudden burst of strength, Danny brought up her foot and with a heavy boot kicked him in the crotch, so hard that she felt a pop under her foot, causing George to double over. And with her foot, pushing with all of her remaining might, she sent him towards the edge of the bus. George stumbled back, his foot getting caught on the barbed wire. As he tried to keep his footing, he twisted his ankle, snapping the bone, which exploded out of his skin, blood spraying across the roof. The sharp spokes of the barbed wire started tearing at his flesh, deep, thick gashes ripping through his skin. He stumbled as he grabbed his leg in agony, and he slipped on the pool of blood which had now formed underneath him, and he plummeted from the roof, his body crashing against the side of the bus, his leg still wrapped in the tendrils of metal, and he hung helpless from the barbed wire. The dead clawed and chewed at his body, biting into his face, ripping his flesh, and plunging their dead hands into his stomach, removing his intestines and other vital organs like a meat-filled piñata. Eventually pulling his body into the crowd, his gargled screams became dwarfed by the sound of messy feeding. Soon the dead pulled his body from the bus, tearing his leg from his torso, leaving it twisted in the barbed wire, hanging, blood pouring like a crimson waterfall. Danny watched emotionless as the dead tore apart their captor, and the group absorbed the body like a gelatinous cube and reforming around it to return banging on the side of the bus.
You okay?
Yeah, thank you for
What the
that.
hell were you thinking?
I don't know. I just wanted him dead. I wasn't thinking. I just saw red.
Julia took her by the arm and led her back into the bus, helping her to lower her down through the hatch. As she landed on the ground, Roach spoke without looking up, because he was concentrating and also because he heard what just conspired and couldn't quite stomach to look at Danny.
What the hell was going on up there? Where's the dickhead?
He slipped, fell into the horde.
Aye, slipped. Okay, well, good riddance. Where did Pete go?
He jumped down and led the dead away.
What? And you let him?
Didn't have much of a choice in the matter. He'll be okay. How are you getting on?
Ha ha ha! Got you, you bastard!
Suddenly the bus roared to life, shuddering loudly. It slowly started to move forward, crushing some of the infected and impaling others on the spike. The crowd almost moved out of the way, closing in behind the bus. They started to follow the sound and the trail of bloody carnage left in its wake. As the group composed themselves and prepared for the reaching of the stadium, from the floor, a radio buzzed to life and a familiar voice filled the bus.
George, come in, George.
Oh shit, it's him.
Answer it then.
I'm not going to answer it.
Answer it, Danny. Tell him we're coming for him.
Shit.
Respond, goddammit.
Shit. Okay, here goes.
But help!
Shut the fuck up.
Is that you?
Yeah, it's her, dickhead. We're coming for you. You have one of ours. We have one of yours.
Danny. Danny. Now that's a voice I never thought I'd hear again. Now, this doesn't have to be ugly. Put George on, and we can discuss this like adults.
That might be difficult. You see, George is currently the main meal at an all-you-can-eat buffet.
You've got balls. I'll give you that, Cunningham.
You have no idea.
It's simple, Danny. We will do a fair trade. You give us Lily, and you'll get your man back.
He better not be hurt, Abbott.
Collateral damage, Danny. Minor compared to what I'll do to you if you harm Lily.
Don't worry about that, Glenn. She will be unharmed unless you fuck us over again.
So much anger in you, Danny. What's happened to you? You used to be such a sweet girl.
Fuck you, you stupid son of a bitch!
Danny threw the radio on the ground and it smashed, plastic and batteries clattering all around. She punched some of the chairs and fell onto one and hung her head, breathing heavily. Julia sat next to Cal and put her arms around him to comfort him, telling him everything was okay. Cal knew that she was lying, but still nodded, wiping his tear away with the dirty sleeve of his jacket. He gave a half smile and stood up and shakily walked over to Danny and placed his hand on her shoulder. She looked up, tears streaming down her red face. Her strands of her black hair were sticking to her face. Cal used his sleeve to wipe away her tears, threw his arms around his sister, and gave her the tightest of hugs, not letting go. The bus hurtled through the dead streets, now clear of the dead, as the horde slowly shuffled its way towards them, towards the stadium, for a final showdown. The Fallen, an Eerie Earth production, written and directed and edited by Kieran Begg, starring Saxon Davids as Pete Kirkman, Megan Chase as Danny Cunningham, Beth Eltringham as Julia, Andrew Lodge as Roach, Ben James as George, Nicole Zivelich as Lily, and Rick Oldroyd as Abbott. Music by Peter Wyszynski, and the Fallen theme by Ross Budgeons. For more information, please head to eerieearth.com. Thanks very much for listening. Bye-bye for now.